Hi, I'm Amy. We're looking at this Clementi Sonatina that you've probably heard before. It's so common in piano teaching music, but so useful. There's a lot to it, even in this small package. It's by Clementi, and it's the first out of 6 sonatinas that are in Opus 36. This is a 3-movement sonatina, and I'm going to look at the first movement with you right now. We're in the key of C major, and I think the reason why piano teachers love this piece for lessons is because the scales and chords are built in. You know, we don't need to create a separate lesson for teaching a C major scale. We run into it in this piece. And so in a way that's convenient, and in a way it's more interesting to the student as well. So we have a musical setting for some of these technical exercises. There are a few elements that are throughout the piece. One is scales, I just mentioned. Another is chord shapes, blocked and broken chords. In fact, the very first measure is outlining a C chord. So we'll see some of those building blocks. We also have a few examples of Alberti bass playing in the left hand. That type of pattern. We have a few examples of octave shapes in the right hand, also in the left, a 4-note broken chord covering an octave. So like I said, this has a lot of great moments for teaching and for practicing on your own. And they're all built in a fun musical way. So the character of this piece is quick and bright, C major, mostly staying near the key of C. I'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about chord shapes. Play a C major chord, first inversion, second inversion. Do you know those? So we're rearranging the notes of the C major chord. Set your hand for a second inversion chord, and that's how the right hand begins. Octave, open the hand, extend the hand, and then scales. Do you have a good plan for the fingers that you're going to use there? Crossing over the thumb with finger 3. Gentle lift off when there's a rest. All of these things will take you into Mozart, Beethoven, Haydn, and beyond. All of the classical sonatas, sonatinas, they have a lot of these same building blocks. So I always say, take the time to do it right at this point, and it will pay off later. The form of a first movement in a sonatina is what we call Sonata Allegro form. There are 3 sections that the composer uses to build this first movement. The first section is the exposition, where we're presented with the first theme, and the second theme, here it is, and so forth. 2 themes. After the exposition, we know it's the end of that when we see a repeat sign, okay? And after that comes the development. We have the same themes presented in some new creative ways, maybe a minor sound in this case, maybe bigger dynamic range, maybe some inversion or fragmentation, don't worry about it, of the themes, where we're taking little bits and pieces and kind of building this more turbulent development section. After that, the final part is called the recap or recapitulation, where we have a balance to what we saw at the beginning. Back to the home key, back to the first and second theme again. I'll show you where that happens. Sounds familiar, right? So we are back to the recap, and that's a clue that we're finishing the piece. This is true in concertos, symphonies, bigger sonatas, even, if we're dealing with many pages, many minutes of music, they're going to be constructed the same way if the first movement is Sonata Allegro form. Okay, keep that in mind. Back to the playing of it at the beginning. We've got that chord shape, we've got the scales figured out. Cut time. All right, we have a clue at the beginning. We have this meter that's a C with a slash through it. Cut time means we're going to feel 2 beats per measure rather than 4 beats. And for me, this just means that it moves a bit faster. It's not quite as grounded in the beats, but a little more lifted. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So remember what cut time is all about and apply that to the beginning. What about dynamics? This piece gives us a chance, even though it's scales and chords and all these basics, it's a really great chance to expand your range of dynamics. Right at the beginning, I have forte, followed by the same theme, piano, quiet. I wanted to point out here, we're moving from the key of C to the key of G for a moment. And the reason why that is so obvious here is because I just played a G major scale. Did you notice the F sharp was included there? The second theme is in the key of G. This is so typical. C is the tonic, G is the dominant, and we move to the dominant key for the second theme. The end of the exposition, since we've already talked about that. Take a step back with me to the second theme. There are two technical elements here that we should stop and think about. The octave shape in the right hand. Can you make sure that you're doing that without a low wrist or a high wrist or anything that's out of alignment? Make sure your posture is there and that your arm and wrist are setting you up for opening the hand. Through the palm of the hand, open to an octave. Okay, I have small hands. I can reach that. If your hands are any bigger than mine, you're fine. Even if you have bigger hands, it's still easy to fall into any of those awkward habits. We should have good alignment through the wrist there. So double check that. In the left hand, we're moving inward to the black keys a little bit to reach that sharp, and we're covering, remember this is called Alberti bass. We have a chord shape and we're breaking it up, bottom, top, middle, top. So again, I can block that chord to find it and I can break it up. I'm going to repeat myself, but learn this now. And then every other sonata that you run into, you'll be using that, I promise. And the next one. Okay, so that's a new pattern for your left hand to get into. Right hand, continuing from there, another place where I might consider the fingering pattern. Write it down, 1, 2, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, crossing over. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 at the end. If you find that you're stumbling over fingers or kind of leaving it to chance, take a minute and plan that. Sometimes it's like figuring out a little puzzle. What's going to be the best pattern of fingers? A rule is cover as many notes as you can in one hand position. Try to do it without hopping or without using the same finger twice in a row. There's the crossover of the thumb, okay? So from the G to the F sharp, but the rest of it can fit under the hand, meaning that I don't need to hop around. It can be played smoothly. This piece can be played without pedal. In fact, I would play it without pedal. I might have my foot on the pedal just for a little depth when I'm playing a loud sound, but generally this should all be done with the fingers. Moving on to the development section, we're moving into C minor for just a few measures. We're getting into some E flats right here. Compare that to the beginning. Second inversion, C major. What we just played in the development is exactly the same placement, but C minor. I love looking through all of these classical sonatas because there's so much balance from one section to another, from one page to another. I always tell my students, you don't always have to practice in a straight line from beginning to end. Compare from one page to another. Take one building block of the piece and search for it throughout. See if you can find balance or contrast or both? You know, is one louder, one softer? What about halfway, you know, through the recap here, I have this. Compare that. Earlier I mentioned inversion, and that's what's going on there. It's flipped upside down. Rather than, okay? So part of the style of these pieces is symmetry, balance, and consistency with the tempo and the way that we interpret all of these musical motives. Continuing through the development, those two measures are usually what hold people up with this piece. That's the place where we have hands together coordination, we have these tremolo octaves, kind of this back and forth. Here's a place where you need to double check the alignment, the connection of the arm. Is this loose and flexible and supportive? If you find that you're playing this from a slouchy, awkward place, it's not going to work out. We want this posture and this arm to be right behind it, and left hand too. That place might be a practice spot, you know, instead of running through the whole piece, just do that 10 times. Here's the thing, it's a little tricky to play, but it's also one of the loudest, exciting, expressive places of the piece. So you have to be prepared for when you do play the whole thing in context, this is the place where you really want to go for it musically. So be ready for that. Practice even more so that you can get some volume and some energy there. Then here's the recap. C major, first theme. I'd like to point out one thing here. We have the second theme in the home key. Again, very, very typical of Sonata Allegro form. Remember that in the exposition, it was in G major, the dominant key. Now it is in C major, the home key. We're getting to the end of the piece. The composer is pulling us back to C major to kind of wrap things up. So it's really typical that you'll have that second theme presented in two different keys. But here it is. And that's it. It ends simply. It ends bright, C major. When you have this sort of grouping in the left hand, keep it simple. Roll through in one motion so that you're not musically making it clunky and you're not overworking in your fingers. There's no reason to exaggerate those notes. One slur group is fine. Roll through that. This piece gives us so many opportunities to practice scales, chords, legato, staccato, forte, piano. So many of these musical elements are presented here in just 2 pages. And not just that, but when you've got it, then you have a piece of music that you can perform, you can memorize, you can enjoy playing. And like I said, this piece is a stepping stone from the beginner level into the more advanced sonatas by Mozart, Beethoven, and others. We're looking at the second movement now of the Clementi Sonatina. This is 3 movements that fit together as one complete sonatina. We're looking at the second movement today. This is the middle part of our Clementi Sonatina, the first in his Opus 36 set of 6. This is a contrast to what we did with the first movement. It's a contrast in key and in meter, and this is so typical with any sonatas or symphonies that you'll have a second movement that gives us a different mood, a different color, and like I said, it's all about contrast. The first movement we saw, it was bright and happy and sunny C major. This one is a lot more thoughtful. It's F major, it's in 3/4, it's a slower tempo. It's even marked with the word dolce, sweetly, okay? So when you play these in sequence, there's a moment in between movements where you can collect your thoughts and really change to a new chapter of the story. The second movement sounds like this. There's a lot of expressive beauty to this melody and this piece in a very simple, straightforward way. I think that's what I like about it. There are a few practice things that I'd like to go through with you and a little bit of how the piece is written that I can share with you. So I think the first thing, very first note, it's all about balance. This melody has to sing out louder than the left hand. And my teacher used to say this is such an unfair thing because the right hand, the melody, is usually playing higher notes with weaker fingers. A lot of times the melody is in our top fingers, okay? And fewer notes than the accompaniment. So you've got all these things against you, but the melody, getting that to really sing, a lot of people don't realize I'm playing it pretty loudly. It doesn't come out as loud because it's one note at a time and it's not loud writing, but I am really playing to the bottom of each key there. I think that's one of those secrets in music. Beginners will sometimes think sweetly, pretty, beautiful, expressive, and they'll play this kind of lovely, this thin, wispy sound. That's not what the pros do. Right to the bottom of the key. Sing that note out, I promise. The left hand is where you can use that thinner sound. This might feel a little bit more shallow or light. So I'm not squeezing as much out of the left hand as I am with the right hand. I would definitely start with exploring that topic. Balance, not just that, but how much tone you want out of each note. I'd like to also look at the very beginning left hand as far as pedaling. You could play this piece with pedal. You don't really need to. I had my foot on the pedal when I just played through it, and I only used it in just a few small moments when I wanted a bit of a deeper, richer sound. Throughout the piece, I'm not pedaling consistently. I'm actually using a technique called finger pedaling, and this is something that we use, you know, in this style of playing in the classical era. My left hand is overlapping the notes intentionally. We're supposed to do this to create a pedal sound. I'm not using my foot at all. So that's a technique called finger pedaling that we apply to Mozart, Beethoven, the classical sonata writers, so that we don't have to use our foot. We don't want that much. So it's just a little bit of this overlap in the fingers. That's something to practice there. On my score, there's actually a word, legato, which means smoothly, and I think I would take that a step further and interpret it as not just smooth, but overlapping a little bit. Okay, so that gets us started at the beginning. We're in the key of F major. Take a moment to review that scale, chord shapes in the left hand. We're seeing a lot of those first 4 measures are just centered around F major. Take a moment and find it. Now, there's a trill. It happens twice in this piece. The note that's printed there is G, and when we add a trill to that note, well, first of all, you can always practice it without a trill. You can just play the simple quarter note that's written. When we add a trill, we are starting on the note above what's written. So in this case, G is printed, so I'm starting on A above it, and I trill back and forth, okay? Just enough time to fill that beat. So maybe that much to start if you're practicing 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think where a lot of people go wrong with trills is they try to control it just with their fingers moving up and down. And a trill actually moves farther back in the arm. Pretend like you're turning a doorknob. That's called rotation motion, rotation technique. A trill comes from that technique. It's actually a rotation. It's a rocking back and forth between those 2 notes. That's something to practice. Rather than setting the hand and just, that's doing it wrong. This is doing it right. So the doorknob thing really helps my students. Pretend like that doorknob is locked and you're kind of shaking it or doing that, jiggling it back and forth. That's what a trill should actually feel like. So there are 2 opportunities in this to work on your trill technique. Let me move on past that. When you get to the end of a slur, I just stopped in a place where I have a quarter note at the end of a slur followed by a rest. What did my hand do? Beautiful lift off of that note. Let the hand relax, let the note taper off. That's the difference between amateur and professional. If you watch some people play, this has to happen. Watch a beginner and they'll go like this. It's not the same. It's not as beautiful, and it's not just about how it looks, but musically it comes across when we follow through. We release the sound and continue the motion. That's a perfect place to practice that technique. Even if it feels kind of artificial at first, it will become more natural. It's something that we do in a place like that. We don't just keep our hand in neutral all the time. There's a lot more motion in this airspace right here. Okay, continuing. There's a place where I would use a touch of pedal, just to open up the sound a little bit and kind of fill in the blanks. B section. Here's where we get that sort of drama or turbulence in the sound here. We're hearing minor chords. We're hearing this strong E-flat sound that's so unexpected in this beautiful, sweetly type of mood. Doesn't last long. We're back to F major, back to the A section again at the end of the piece. I need to point this out. There's a slur ending. And this is another one of those difference between amateur and professional. The end of a slur needs to be quieter than the rest. Unless there's some exception to that or it's marked otherwise, in a place like this, that note has to be quiet. It has to be tapered off to create a beautiful slur ending. It's so graceful and elegant. What I hear from beginners in that moment is the same thing, and the magic is gone. Can you find those slur endings and give yourself a little decrescendo, or diminuendo means the same thing, getting softer every time that there's a slur ending. Try that and see how it shapes the sound. That rule carries through all of this whole movement. Okay, so here's an example. Softer right there. Give it time to breathe. Next one. Softer. There's that lift. Back to sweetly flowing. Here's our other trill measure. Rotate. Lift off, hands to your lap when you're done. I need to say one more thing about the overall tempo of this movement. It's so easy to get focused on that left hand triplet pattern that keeps happening. 1 and 2 and a lot of people take the tempo a bit too slow because of that. I'm thinking about my left hand. If I get too focused on all of those notes happening in the left hand, it pulls everything, it slows everything, and my melody just dies and my energy just dies. The melody has to be the guide for the tempo. The way that I would sing that or feel that, that's my guide. The left hand has to keep up with the melody. That's not something that's obvious to beginners sometimes, because the left hand has more notes. It's more to deal with. It takes more focus sometimes. But like I said, as soon as you start putting your ear on that busy left hand, the whole thing just deflates. So maybe a way to get past that would be practice blocking these chords. See how quickly those beats are going by. And then add your triplet rhythm back into that. 1, 2, 3. It'll be surprising how quickly those go by. But blocking the chords, that sets you up for success because your hand is there and then you just add the rhythm to it and you're good. Keep your hand close to the keys, small motions to create a small sound, kind of a shallow feeling. That will apply, like I've said before, to even more advanced music. That's something that will stay with you. Balancing the melody, that will stay with you. Playing expressively, always. I hope you enjoy working on this second movement, the andante slow movement of our Clementi Sonatina. Be sure to check out the first and third to complete the set of 3 movements. Enjoy. Looking at the third movement today of our Clementi Sonatina. Altogether, the 3 of them complete the story. And this is kind of typical of sonatinas or sonatas, that we have 3 contrasting parts that go together as one bigger story. First movement, we saw kind of a bright and bold and cheerful character. Second one was a little bit more thoughtful and singing and expressive. The third, this is typical. Bright and playful, funny, quirky, not quite as serious as the first 2. And like I said, typical. You'll see this in symphonies, concertos, sonatas, classical writing. This is usually how we end up, something that is quick and fun to play. Listen to how this goes. And that's how the whole set finishes up, with this big, bright C major chord. It's great for all ages. It's fun to share with people. And I'd like to get into this third movement a little bit today. The tempo marking here is vivace, which means lively, full of life, energy. And I think that's the takeaway from this piece. When you hear it, it's just fireworks or clowns or something with so much motion in front of you. The melody at first, it goes by so quickly, but as you can hear, it happens again and again in different ways: loud, soft, high, low. So we start to think that we're singing along almost. That's how it feels to me. Let's look at the right hand at the beginning. We're in the key of C again, back to our home key. We had this in the first movement and now again here. The time signature is 3/8. Take a moment to think about how that's going to work. 3 beats in each measure, but the 8th note gets the beat. 3/8 usually moves along pretty quickly, lightly, and I would advise to not play every beat heavy, but instead aim for the first beat of the measure as being the strong point, and then the other beats much lighter. This is true when we do a waltz or a dance, but I think it applies here also. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. What did we say about slur endings? Here's a great place to point that out. The end of a slur is a quieter, gentler, lifting moment. It's not landing and clunking, not usually, unless maybe there's some exception. The usual rule is that we lift off at the end of a slur, graceful and light. I can tell you all of the slur endings throughout this whole movement, this whole sonatina, are going to follow that rule. End of a slur, graceful lift. Okay, and not just graceful lift, but a quieter sound. That's what should come out musically. The first 8 bars are marked piano. Now, the danger with this is that you try to play too small and too light. Remember, the melody does not need to ever fit into this thin, wispy. We don't do that. Still play with tone right to the bottom of the key. The piano forte contrast is just contrast. It's not some way to check if you're soft enough or loud enough. It's just make the 2 phrases different. So here's how I would do it. Kind of a average feeling at the beginning. I'm not telling myself to play quietly at all. I'm just not overdoing it. Then here's my forte sound. I'm throwing more into it. As long as those 2 things sound different, you're fine. Contrast is what that's all about. Back to piano after that. Can you check that you're playing down, up? Physically and also musically. Drop into the key and lift out of the key. And listen to how that comes through in the sound, louder to softer. Okay, practice that. With my students, I'll get this kind of halfway. They'll kind of fake it. Try to make that as natural as just taking a step or, kicking a ball or whatever you're good at doing. This should be a motion that you're familiar with. Down, up. It's not something that you have to fake it. Get used to doing that. It applies to a lot of music. Loud sound. Quiet at the end of the slur. There it is. Soft. Do you see the down and up there? You can do that. Okay. We get into this big scale coming up. That's where I would grab a pencil, write down fingering patterns. We're starting with finger 3, thumb, cross over. But which finger do you cross over? This is where the planning comes in. This follows the standard fingering that we would use in a G major scale. So if that helps you, when we get to G, we're crossing finger 4 on the sharp. We're crossing finger 3 on the B. So if you know how to play that scale, you can apply what you know in this music. Quiet at the end of the slur, there's another one. And then we get this kind of surprising moment. F sharp leading us to F natural. And at the beginning of this piece, I said, it's kind of funny, it's kind of quirky, and I think this is the moment that really shines through. You've got, it's like a question mark, or it's like, waiting for the punchline. And what do we get? Right back to our home key, our first theme. It's presented again, and we go from there to the end of the piece. So this little turning point is so funny to me. Continuing on, we have the marking pianissimo, small sound. Like I said earlier, I'm not playing in a thin way. I'm just lightening up. I'm not adding quite as much weight. If you'd like to try there, you could try the soft pedal on the left. To be honest, I don't think I would use it there. This goes by so quickly that I don't think I would bother with it, but the option is there. If on your piano, it's hard to get this soft enough, it works okay here, but maybe that's ringing out too much. Great, put your left foot on the soft pedal and the option is there to cut that sound down. That's what it's for. Just be sure to let that go when you want to play loud in the next phrase. Here's our down and up, down and up, down and up. You should see that motion happening. Another big scale shape. Make a plan for that. Practice the patterns of fingers. Slur technique. I've mentioned the slurs a few times now, but what about staccato? When you see these dots, these staccato dots, and we want to leave the key quickly without creating this clunk. Of course, we don't want that. We just want to leave the key. It's actually kind of a brush. It's kind of a pullback with the fingers. I should have pointed it out earlier, but it's okay. When we get here, the fingertip is actually, think of you're dusting some dust off of the key. That's the motion that allows your finger to leave the key really quickly. Instead of pressing down and pulling back up, that's way too bulky. We need this quick, I think of it as brushing or flicking off of the key. What about here in the left hand? I'm really pulling those fingers back. If I kept going with that pulling motion, I could close my hand into a fist. That's the direction I'm going. But, we just go a little bit. Left hand staccato. I'm doing it again there. Same thing. I would add add pedal here. When I want a full and loud sound, these last chords are a great example of pedal, pedal. Be sure to lift the pedal when you lift your hands so that we don't have this. That's not good. We want sound is done, hands in your lap, everyone claps. I hope you've enjoyed working on this sonatina. This was the third movement. I would love it if you try putting all three together and play the whole sonatina. Remember that each movement is kind of like a different chapter of the story, and it's really complete when you put them all together. Enjoy! Thanks so much for watching. I'm Amy. Don't forget to hit subscribe and tap the notification bell. And be sure to check out the Playground Sessions interactive app. I'll see you soon for the next lesson video.